Have you ever thought about what happens when someone with a mental health condition ends up in the prison system?
It's a conversation we need to have because what's happening behind those walls is a crisis that affects all of us. Let's start with a fundamental question. Should a diagnosis of a mental illness automatically make someone a person of interest in a criminal investigation? For too long, the answer has been a resounding and unfair yes.
Throughout history, society has struggled with how to handle mental illness.
We look back at the era of asylums, where people were locked away, often in horrifying conditions, and we see it as a dark chapter. We tell ourselves we've moved past that we're more enlightened now. But have we really? Or have we just replaced one institution with another? Today, instead of asylums,
Our jails and prisons have become the de facto housing for a huge number of people struggling with mental health challenges. The statistics are staggering. A shocking 63% of all inmates in the United States prison system are living with a mental illness. This isn't a small fraction, it's the majority. Some enter the system with pre-existing conditions, while for others, the harsh, isolating, and often traumatic environment of incarceration triggers or worsens their mental health struggles. The system isn't just failing to help. In many cases, it's actively making things worse. Now, you might be thinking, but aren't there laws to protect them? Don't prisons have to provide care? And you're right. The United States Supreme Court has affirmed that prisoners have a right to medical and mental health treatment. It's on the books. It's the law of the land. But the gap between what the law says and what actually happens on the ground is vast and deeply troubling. The promise of care often rings hollow. Let me share a story that brings this issue into sharp focus. Let's talk about a man named Josh. Josh has a diagnosed mental illness. According to the law, he should be receiving treatment. But he's not. He has received absolutely no treatment for his condition while incarcerated. It's not just an oversight. It's a consistent refusal to provide him with the medication he needs. And his story isn't unique. It gets even more disturbing. Josh had a cellmate who suffers from seizures. This is a serious medical condition that requires consistent medication to manage. Yet, since being in prison, this man was repeatedly denied his prescribed seizure medication. Think about that for a moment. Withholding life-stabilizing medication from someone who depends on it? What happened next was predictable and tragic. The cellmate had a severe seizure, so bad that an ambulance had to be called. He was taken to a hospital, stabilized, and then sent back to the prison. You'd think an emergency like that would be a wake-up call for the facility, right? That they would immediately correct their mistake and ensure he got his medication. But that's not what happened. The very next day, when he was in the medication line, he was denied his seizure medication once again. But it's what they gave him instead that is just beyond belief. They handed him a blindfold. And they told him to use that instead of his medication. I wish I was making this up. A blindfold for seizures. This isn't just negligence. It's a level of cruelty and disregard for human life that is difficult to comprehend. When we hear stories like this, the official statements and court rulings about providing care feel like a cruel joke. The Supreme Court can say that prisoners are receiving care, but what does that mean if this is the reality? Perhaps the justices, the lawmakers, and the administrators should be required to spend just one day inside one of these facilities, to see it for themselves, to eat the food, which, in this same prison, was reportedly found to have maggots in the rice served for dinner, to witness a man being given a blindfold for a seizure. Maybe then, they could truly say whether or not prisoners are receiving the care they are constitutionally guaranteed. This isn't just about one person or one prison. This is a systemic failure. We are criminalizing mental illness. Instead of providing community-based treatment, support, and resources that could prevent people from ending up in the justice system in the first place, we wait until they are in crisis. Then, we arrest them, prosecute them, and lock them away in environments that are proven to be detrimental to mental health. The prison system was designed for punishment and security, not for therapeutic care. Correctional officers are trained as guards, not as mental health professionals. Overcrowding, solitary confinement,
violence, and a lack of meaningful activity create a perfect storm for psychological deterioration. It's an environment where someone with anxiety, depression, or PTSD is likely to get much worse, not better. And for those with severe conditions like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, the lack of consistent treatment can have catastrophic consequences. So, what does this lead to? A vicious cycle. An individual with an untreated mental illness struggles to follow the rigid rules of prison life. They might act out not out of malice, but because of their condition. This leads to disciplinary action, like solitary confinement, which is a form of torture for a healthy mind, let alone for someone already struggling. Their condition worsens, leading to more infractions, a longer sentence, and a decreased chance of ever successfully reintegrating into society. When they are eventually released, often with their mental health in a far worse state than when they went in, and with the added trauma of incarceration, what happens? They have a criminal record, making it hard to find housing or a job. They are disconnected from support systems. Is it any surprise that recidivism rates are so high, especially for this population? We are setting people up to fail. We are investing in a system of punishment that creates more problems than it solves, and we are all paying the price. Not just financially, but morally. We need to demand better. This isn't a partisan issue. It's a human rights issue. We need to push for real change. This means investing in mental health care on the outside to divert people from the criminal justice system in the first place. It means training law enforcement to recognize and de-escalate mental health crises instead of responding with force. It means properly funding mental health courts and diversion programs that prioritize treatment over incarceration. And for those who are in prison, we must demand that their constitutional right to health care is honored in practice, not just on paper. This requires independent oversight, accountability for facilities that fail to provide care, and a fundamental shift in the culture of our correctional system. We need to see these individuals as human beings who are sick and need help, not as problems to be managed or ignored. The story of Josh and his cellmate is a stark reminder of the human cost of our broken system. How many more people have to be denied care? How many more lives have to be destroyed before we say enough is enough? Change begins with awareness. It begins with conversations like this one. Share this story. Talk to your friends and family about it. Write to your elected officials. Support organizations that are fighting for prison reform and mental health advocacy. We cannot afford to look away. The health of our society is measured by how we treat our most vulnerable, and right now, we are failing the test. Thank you for listening.